This is from a company that's 15 billion in size, family-owned, private company, and they have a small fleet. I think, Andy, you said 1.25 million cars that they own. This is not franchised cars or franchisees, but cars that they own. So we want to hear from a CEO who's, again, very visionary, much like Paul Pullman, but in a different way. So please welcome Andy Taylor with Enterprise Holdings.
Good morning. I have to say, though, I've never been preceded by Prince Charles. That is rather daunting. My son-in-law is British, so I know all the British stuff, and so that's quite incredible. And MR, thank you. It's really a privilege to be part of your organization and watch what you do here. And so thank you, and I'm very honored to have the opportunity to speak here. Also, some of you in the audience are partners of ours. A couple of car companies, for instance, and also some customers, and I just want to say thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And lastly, my father did start our business. I'll talk about him in a minute. But when I became 16, he was very anxious to have me get my driver's license so I can go out and repossess cars with him. So, MR, you've invited a repo man to come address your audience following Prince Charles, so I'm not sure about your judgment there. Okay, but it's a real pleasure to be here and speak with you about enterprise and how we approach some of these sustainability issues facing our company that you face. For those of you who are not familiar with our company, let me give you a little quick background, if I might. Enterprise Holdings is the largest car rental company in the world with a 3-brand portfolio comprised of not just Enterprise, but National Car Rental and Alamo Car Rental. We own the largest fleet of automobiles in the world, more than 1 million. Supported by a network of more than 7,000 company-owned branches, both on and off airport. We operate in more communities and neighborhoods than any other car rental company in North America. In fact, in this country, you can find an Enterprise branch located within 15 miles of 90% of the U.S. population. In addition, we operate company-owned businesses in the UK, Germany, Ireland, France, and Spain, as well as a licensee network elsewhere in the world, such as in China. In total, we complete tens of millions of rental transactions each year, and about 130,000 rental transactions take place a day. So we see about 2 NFL football stadiums of people a day. But we did not start out that way. In fact, when my father started the company 55 years ago, he opened the doors with 2 employees and a fleet of 7 cars. The term sustainability, in the sense we use it today, had yet to be coined. And I'm pretty sure my father's sustainability plan back then was limited to finding enough customers to keep his modest fleet on the road and earning just enough money to cover the monthly payroll. It took more than a decade for us to open a single branch office outside of hometown St. Louis, and for the first 20-plus years, Enterprise remained a small, regional, unknown company. As we entered the 1980s, expansion and growth started to happen more frequently. In 1983, we had grown to 100 branches and $100 million in revenue. 10 years after that, we had more than 1,000 offices with revenues of $1 billion, and we had been taking our first steps into the international marketplace about that time. Fast forward once more, and about another decade or so, and word was getting out. Enterprise remains a family-owned business today, but it had become the largest rent-a-car company in North America. To quote a 2006 article in Fortune magazine about our company, Enterprise has been quietly going about its business, but now the spotlight has turned, and suddenly the whole world was learning about Enterprise. And as you might imagine, we are very proud of the good fortune that has taken us to the top of our industry. It's been a real privilege. But with our success, there has come a level of responsibility and involvement in societal issues that in past years would have been beyond our scope. And folks, trust me when I say that learning how to shoulder that responsibility is a daunting and never-ending task, and I know all of you are doing that too. For example, researchers began to seek our input on alternative fuel initiatives. We began discussing fuel efficiency issues with auto manufacturers. We found ourselves in discussions with someone by the name of Ron Bloom, President Obama's then advisor for manufacturing policy and the auto industry, on subjects like emission standards. and people began to ask what we were doing to offset or improve the environmental impact of the hundreds of thousands of vehicles that we own. In short, we began to realize that our company's age-old principle of supporting local neighborhoods and communities where we work had now evolved into a much larger and more global responsibility to play a role in helping find the right solutions to the world's growing concerns around energy and transportation. And the first thing we had to do was identify exactly what our role was going to be. We established a sustainability task force, creating a mechanism to define our corporate role, built a strategy around it, and directed our efforts behind it. We came to understand that Enterprise is in a unique position to help identify and deliver the best mobility solutions to future generations. As the company that owns and operates the world's largest fleet of passenger vehicles, we have the capacity to provide the perfect channel for introducing, testing, and socializing new vehicles and other transportation innovations. With our extensive operating network, we have the infrastructure to fully service and support new initiatives to address our world's growing concerns around the future of mobility. In effect, we have the ability to serve as, we like to call it, a petri dish, where consumers can experience new technologies through our rental cars in what amounts to an extended test drive, helping to identify what works and what does not work. That is our role in the mobility value chain, and in performing this role, we help ensure that the best solutions will prove themselves in a free market setting, because ultimately the marketplace will determine the best solutions by responding positively to the options that best meet consumer needs in terms of performance, logistics, and of course economics. With our role identified, the next step has been to build the right partnerships. The simple fact is there will be no single solution, no silver bullet, no individual provider that meets all the mobility challenges facing our world today. It will take a collection of ideas, innovations, and technologies to build a sustainable mobility platform. But most importantly, it will take collaboration. So we work with vehicle manufacturers and fuel researchers. That includes our support for the Enterprise Institute for Renewable Fuels, which is housed at one of the world's leading plant science centers to collaborate on new fuel alternatives and other vehicle advancements. We continue to communicate with government organizations on topics like fuel efficiency standards and alternative powered vehicles. We cooperate with organizations such as the Transportation Sustainability Research Center, the Electrification Coalition, the National League of Cities, and the Department of Energy's Clean Cities Initiative to broaden discussion about transportation issues and help communities across the U.S. identify and implement local sustainability programs and policies. True collaboration is the key, and so too is a firm commitment, because as we all know, finding the right solution will not happen overnight. It will not happen overnight. It will take time, patience, and a lot of trial and error. For example, a few years ago, we worked in close cooperation with the EPA on the E85 Flex Fuel program. Enterprise designated 8 E85 Flex Fuel branches, where as much as 30% of our local fleet were flex fuel vehicles capable of using the E85, a blend of 85% ethanol and 15% gasoline. The EPA provided financing to local fueling stations to install the necessary equipment to offer E85 fuel. Our vehicles housed at nearby branches provided a steady supply of E85 vehicles to the newly equipped fueling stations. Unfortunately, the program saw little response from customers and ultimately failed. One reason has been the backlash of the food versus fuel argument. Another factor was the limited number of fueling stations. As a result, consumer response to the program was below expectations. But what it did point out was that it was an alternative product that brought to market without sufficient consumer interest or incentive to support it, and thus it will fail under its own weight if we don't have the right support from consumers. Today, electric vehicles are viewed by many as one of the future's best personal transportation alternatives. However, there are many hurdles to overcome before the electric vehicle takes a substantial place in the transportation mindset, including issues like limited travel distances, lengthy charging times, the higher purchase cost of these vehicles, and how to ensure an adequate supply of electricity. But the biggest hurdle for this and any alternative is consumer acceptance. This is one of the reasons behind our new Driving Futures Network, where we will offer an expanded fleet of electric vehicles and hybrids in more than 30 markets across the country. Through this network, Enterprise will offer rental cars customers the largest selection of hybrid and electric vehicles, including for now the Nissan Leaf and Chevrolet Volt for daily and weekly rentals. Incidentally, we already have the largest supply of these vehicles in the rental industry, but our Driving Futures Network, which will launch later this year, will make it easier for consumers to seek out and experience these remarkable new technologies, and they are pretty cool to drive. By providing and promoting these alternatives, the Enterprise Driving Futures Network will help consumers better understand and accept them, a very effective way of socializing sustainable mobility options like electric vehicles. Let me give you one more example. Another newly emerging alternative is the concept of car sharing. As cities around the world continue to grow in size, city planners are working to improve and expand their mass transportation options to meet growing urban needs. While this approach may meet the mobility requirements of many urbanites, there will always be occasions where people will need the use of a car. So in 2005, the Enterprise brand introduced hourly rentals in large urban settings. It was a natural extension of our business rental program, and many innovative corporate fleet managers are now turning to car sharing as an effective part of their long-term transportation plan. The success of this effort led to the launch of our membership-based car-sharing program called WeCar in 2007. From the consumer perspective, car-sharing technology represents a viable alternative to many urban-related issues associated with car ownership, including the high cost of vehicle ownership, congestion, emissions, parking, insurance, and so on. So on the face of it, car-sharing makes perfect sense, and it would seem to be an easy alternative to rental car companies to implement. But even here, there are some complications. First, you need to create the technical support, computerized systems to deliver the seamless process of reserving, accessing, and returning the vehicles that customers want. Second, you need to provide the logistical support. That includes the facilities to park the vehicles and the manpower to regularly clean and maintain them. And third, you need to promote the system. At Enterprise, we already have the scale and structure to implement car sharing effectively in virtually every urban market. But the one critical hurdle still remains: gathering widespread customer acceptance. When that happens, car sharing will likely become a more viable part of the urban mobility equation, but like other potential solutions, the marketplace will decide what works the best. It's all about the marketplace. Enterprise today owns the world's largest fleet of passenger vehicles, over 1 million cars and trucks, and we are very proud of our success and growth over the years. But we have also become so large that some people only see us as part of the mobility problem. Despite the investments we have made to advance viable mobility solutions, some people will suggest we should be doing more, that we should invest more of our earnings to address the concerns caused by the combustion engine in a world growing more crowded every day. Bottom line, we have become a target for people who want faster or different solutions, and there will always be those who think we are not doing enough. But like any business, we don't have a choice. If we're not profitable, we cannot survive. What we will do is stay heavily involved, because for our business to remain sustainable well into the future, we must work to ensure the long-term viability of the passenger vehicle. In this way, our goals as a company should always remain aligned with those of society as a whole. For the past 55 years, my family's business has been committed to providing effective transportation solutions. Over time, people's transportation needs have evolved, and we have consistently worked to meet those changes along the way. That will never change. Today, the mobility issues facing our world are much more complex than ever before, and every stakeholder in the transportation industry has a role to play in achieving them. It will take continued investment, it will take continued cooperation and sharing of ideas. It will take time and a collection of small steps to continue to move us forward. But I personally believe it's a very, very exciting time for our business and this mobility challenge. So thank you very much, and I'd love to have some questions from the audience, if I might.
Questions, anybody? I have one to start off, Andy.
Yeah,
We'll just come up here.
sure.
So the question is on the gas mileage side. So over time, your general fleet, what's been the average gas mileage of the fleet over the last 10? Do you have any metrics on that?
Sure. Our overall gas mileage, and if you're talking just in the U.S., has gone up 4 or 5 miles per gallon at least. And I think now we are about half of our fleet is more than 32 miles per gallon. And one other thought, so that's a lot of fuel. That is a lot of fuel for that many vehicles. One other thought is that our government has to start considering as consumers, mobility, and businesses consume less gasoline, and that is happening at a pretty rapid rate. That 18 cents per gallon that goes in the Highway Trust Fund is going to shrink. So the government has to start thinking about just what to do about that. I was at a meeting with the head of GM North America recently, and he said he and his family have had a 2-year-old Volt, 8,000 plus miles, and he's bought 16 gallons of gas. So things are changing rapidly.
But then, like you said, the roads may not be there to support that if there's no gasoline tax.
It's unfortunately just one of our many problems right now that are not addressed. Yeah.
There's a question back there.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned one of your partners is the Electrification Coalition, and I know they're doing a lot of great work on creating employment communities throughout the U.S. I'd just like to hear a little more about what enterprise.
Yeah.
So if you could repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. We have been working with the Electrification Coalition, and just what has been our role in working with that organization to implement, call it the rollout, if you will. We recently announced, or will announce, and I don't know, Lee, if it's been announced yet, but a partnership with Orlando, Florida, whereby we will be, the city and ourselves and the Electrification Coalition will be installing charging stations in various locations. We will provide the vehicles and the maintenance and all the details with that. We are, with our Alamo brand, we're the rent-a-car company of Disney. So this will be a great opportunity in that market to introduce those vehicles. That's just one example. We have about 500 Leafs out in the West Coast area. Our branches, we're kind of putting our vehicles, those electric vehicles, in branches near the Nissan dealerships, for instance, that are selling those vehicles. We are putting charging stations there. Those are, Department of Energy is putting some stations there too. And so it's going to be very gradual here. And electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids like the Volt, Ford has electric vehicles coming out next spring, I believe. It's going to be slow. And then you have this complication of CNG, which we're being approached now about CNG vehicles. A couple of the manufacturers have announced pickup trucks that will run on CNG but also have a gasoline tank. So this whole thing is really moving, and a couple of the manufacturers that are here know that they have got to put big investments somewhere and make big bets, if you will, as to what fuel is going to be utilized. The Electrification Coalition has made the statement that it looks like electric will work for vehicles. Natural gas would work for larger trucks, although FedEx, I believe, is trying to electrify some of its local delivery vehicles. And then biofuels could be for aviation. So, but it's going to be interesting to watch all this evolve. Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations on your success, and thank you for your leadership. You've chosen to remain a private company over the years. What's been your thought process as you've evaluated becoming publicly traded?
The only reason to become publicly traded is that you need the capital. And I'm blessed with the fact that, first of all, my family has been very willing to reinvest in the company. My father started with $25,000 of borrowed money to start the business. And we're named Enterprise after the aircraft carrier he flew off of in World War II. He was one of the greatest generation guys. And it's just been a terrific experience, and the family has reinvested. Our family is also not very good at procreation. It's a very small family. So it's easier to pass along a family to that is smaller and everybody can get on the page more easily rather than having a lot of outliers. And did I say that in a politically polite sort of way? So I think there are two miracles with our business. The first is we got as big and successful as we have, and the second is we arrived at this place private. And I think in this day and age, the ability of a corporation like ours to think longer term versus those that are publicly traded or private equity owned. I'm sorry, I know some of you or most of you are involved with businesses that are publicly held. I think that's a real advantage for us right now. And we just bought a company, we paid almost nothing for it in France and Spain, a 30,000 car rental operation. Some people say, what are you doing investing in France and Spain? Well, our horizon is 10 years. It's not shorter, it's a pretty low risk, and in the short run, it's probably going to not do so well. That's okay. So thank you for the question. And again, let me just say it's been a total privilege to have this happen. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's been great fortune, and we want to use a lot of our resources to deal with issues like I just talked about, very frankly, because that's going to burnish our reputation and frankly be a competitive advantage in the future. Yes, sir. We have been in the United Kingdom. In fact, we're the largest in the United Kingdom, and the mass transit opportunities there are pretty good. I ride the trains in the UK, but that does not mean that people in the UK don't drive like crazy. They do. They love their cars. Now, with petrol being as expensive as it is, and I was there last week, and I think it was $1.30 for a liter. It's gone up quite a bit. But people have adapted to that. Their cars are smaller, as you know. They have manual transmissions. Many of them don't have air conditioning. And so our fleet is very different, and about half are diesel. And so they have adapted, and that's because of the free market system. And I hope that here in the United States, we can have that kind of free market adaptation that is going to occur. Now, we have to continue to be engaged with government to figure out where this is going to come out and what part they're going to play. And that's why we have engaged, particularly during the GM and Chrysler bankruptcy and through that and coming out of the average mile per gallon to 2025, why we want to be involved in all that. Because we purchase somewhere between 6 and 8% of all the vehicles made in the U.S.
A question here, David?
David Hitchens, Northrop Grumman. Continue what you're doing. I love your company, especially the Long Beach, California, Cherry Avenue office.
I love you, man. I love you, man. Thank you.
I think your secret weapon is the pickup truck. And I say that because you're my third car, you're my third vehicle. When I need to move things, I don't have to.
By the way, I didn't give this guy a dime. I didn't give him a cup of tea, nothing this morning. Okay.
What I've always wanted to ask somebody in your leadership position from the top is have you ever thought about the deal where I go to buy a new car, which I'm going to do in a few months? If I bought a small car, I could get a pickup truck from Enterprise Rent-A-Car for like 3 or 4 times a year as part of the deal.
That is a very good question. And some people are kind of chuckling. We have had some tests with a couple of auto manufacturers on just that. What is really happening, and particularly with the millennials, is they aren't necessarily interested in owning things. They just want to have the availability of the use.
Right.
And my father wants to own whatever he uses. My kids just want the use. So we are trying to pilot, and this is probably a 15-year-old, kind of thought, where people, when they buy a vehicle, they're buying not only that vehicle, but they're also buying the use of a convertible for a weekend. If you're out in California, I don't know where you are, but or a pickup truck or whatever. But those kinds of things are going to be coming. And I believe that this car sharing notion, which I give a lot of credit to Zipcar because they've gotten a lot of press, but they are really small. They're less than 10,000 vehicles. And some people, that's a lot of cars. But when you're, it's a mile wide and an inch deep, they're in Europe and all that. I think some of this is all going to merge, particularly with great technology, some of which may come out of your company, which is a fabulous company. And this is all going to come together where that could very well occur.
I mean, I'd love to see the advertisement where I walk into a Ford dealership and say, I can get that hybrid, but you've got my back.
Yeah. Well, we can kind of do that. We can kind of do that now. When people come to town, you need that third car. But maybe to streamline it, if you will. And then we're working where you can rent that car from your iPhone and go someplace 7x24, and it's there. Unfortunately, we won't always have that terrific enterprise person there to greet you and all that. But that's going to happen. And by the way, I love your business. Thank you for the things you do for our U.S. government. My father-in-law was an Air Force general, so I got a problem. My wife is an Air Force brat. I come from the Navy, so we have these occasional days on Army-Navy football day where we don't agree on anything.
We built for both.
I know that. And I've been on an aircraft carrier, and I love your stuff.
Any other questions? Great. Oh, one more. Yeah, last one.
So just to follow up on the technology, I assume the technology over the 65 years has changed quite a bit. I'm originally I'd like to hear your leadership from an information technology perspective. I'm sure you're getting a lot of pressure from your customers to share information about emissions, fuel, very critical to your own business. Can you share some thoughts on how you lead?
Let's see. What time do you want to serve dinner? In the beginning, and I'm going to try to make this really concise if I possibly can, we got in the technology business in the early 70s. We hired a technologist from IBM, and it was to keep track of our business, kind of a defensive sort of thing. Well, it's gradually moved into an offensive kind of business where technology is a huge competitive advantage or disadvantage. And you throw in the social media along with that. But let me give you an example. We pioneered a system called ARMS, and we do a ton of business with the insurance industry when their customers and insureds and claimants have accidents. Like one insurance company, we get a reservation about every 10 seconds. Through a frictionless system of technology where, for example, a person in an accident can now go into their website of their insurance company and fill out all the information, and part of it says, do you want a car rental? And that's going to transfer to mobility. And we, in the next year, are going to have the kind of thing where you can, on your phone, do virtually anything with your insurance company. With us, our car sharing program, the same. But it's all coming together beautifully. And frankly, as a privately held business, back to this lady's question, we can invest more. I don't have to worry about whether it takes 8 cents off this quarter's earnings. So we can pony up and be ready to really have a neat competitive advantage. So without taking up more time. Thank you so much for the question.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.